You don't know me. The man on the ground rasped, blood darkening his teeth. Walk away, kid. Liam Hayes looked at the four men closing in, then at the rusted wrench in his hand, and said the only thing that made sense. I know enough. That was it. 3 seconds. No plan, no backup, no guarantee he'd walk out of that parking lot with all his teeth. Just a 26-year-old mechanic, a piece of scrap iron, and something burning in his chest that he couldn't name and couldn't ignore. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now and drop your city in the comments below. I want to see exactly how far this story travels. The heat in Kingman, Arizona didn't break after sundown. It just changed shape, moved from the pavement into the air, thick and dry, pressing against your skin like a hand that didn't want to let go. It was the kind of night that made people irritable, made dogs howl at nothing, made old arguments flare back up in double-wide trailers with the AC rattling on its last legs. Liam Hayes didn't notice the heat anymore. He'd grown up in it. He was driving his '94 Silverado back from a parts run in Flagstaff, the flatbed loaded with a rebuilt transmission casing he'd sourced for $40. Less than his boss expected, which meant he was already calculating whether to mention that saving or just let it ride. He was tired. His knuckles were still stained with grease that wouldn't come out no matter how hard he scrubbed. And he had a half-eaten gas station burrito on the passenger seat that he kept telling himself he'd finish, but kept forgetting. He wasn't looking for anything. He wasn't thinking about anything except getting home, checking on his mother, and maybe sleeping 4 hours before the shop opened at 7. Then he saw the lights. Not police lights, not headlights, just the ambient glow of Kingman bleeding up into the low desert sky, and beneath it, tucked behind the shuttered remains of what used to be a Flying J, off Route 66, a cluster of movement that didn't belong to the night. He almost didn't stop. He pulled onto the gravel shoulder and sat there with the engine idling, squinting through the windshield. 4 figures, one on the ground. The arithmetic of it was simple and ugly. He put the truck in park. Later, people would ask him what he was thinking in that moment. Reporters, podcasters, a true crime blogger from Phoenix, who drove 3 hours to interview him at the shop. They all wanted the same thing. They wanted him to say he felt called or chosen, or that some instinct deeper than reason took over. They wanted a story about destiny. Liam always told them the same thing: I just couldn't drive away. He grabbed the wrench off the floorboard, a 14-inch combination wrench with a stress crack in the handle he'd been meaning to replace for 6 months, and he got out of the truck. The gravel crunched under his boots. The 4 men didn't hear him coming, or if they did, they didn't take him seriously, which was a mistake people made about Liam Hayes with some regularity. He was lean, not particularly tall, with blonde hair, sun-bleached, almost white, and hands that were calloused to the point of looking older than the rest of him. He didn't have the build of a fighter. He had the build of a man who spent 10 hours a day torquing bolts and didn't have time for the gym. He got within 20 feet before one of them turned around. The man was thick-necked, late 30s, wearing a dark canvas jacket despite the heat. He had the flat eyes of someone who'd made a habit of not feeling things. Wrong place, the man said. Not a warning, a fact. Maybe, Liam said. He kept walking. Stop. Liam stopped, not because he was afraid, but because he'd gotten close enough to see the man on the ground clearly, and what he saw made his stomach drop. The man was big, not just large built like something structural, like a load-bearing wall that had been forced horizontal. He was wearing a black leather vest over a white thermal, and even face down in the gravel, with blood running from somewhere above his left ear. There was something about him that suggested the natural order of things had been violated. This was not a man who belonged on the ground. This was not a man who lost fights. He was losing this one. Walk away, the man on the ground said. His voice was gravel and broken glass. Don't know you. Don't owe you. Walk away. Liam looked at him, then at the 4 men, then back at him. I know enough, Liam said. What happened next took 11 seconds. Liam knew this because a security camera mounted on the back of the abandoned fuel station recorded the whole thing, and the timestamp was right there in the corner of the footage when it eventually appeared on the internet and broke several viewing records in the process. 11 seconds. Liam moved left instead of forward, which pulled the 2 men on that side away from the man on the ground. He didn't swing the wrench. He held it horizontally with both hands and drove it hard into the solar plexus of the nearest man, with the butt end a short, sharp strike that had more physics than muscle behind it. The kind of thing you learn by accident when you'd been leveraging tools in tight engine bays for 8 years and understood instinctively how to transfer force. The man went down, making a sound like a punctured tire. The second man grabbed for Liam's arm. Liam let him take it, used the momentum to spin himself into a position where his elbow connected with the man's nose. Not hard enough to do structural damage. Hard enough to make the man's eyes water and his grip loosen. He turned. The third man, the thick-necked one, was reaching for something inside his jacket. Liam threw the wrench. Not at the man. He threw it at the ground in front of him hard so it bounced up with a sharp metallic crack that sounded in the quiet of the desert night considerably more violent than it actually was. The man flinched back. His hand came out of his jacket, empty. The fourth man had already taken 3 steps toward the highway. "Tell me to stop," Liam said. His voice was calm. That was the thing people always mentioned later. The thing that unsettled everyone who heard the audio from the security footage. He wasn't breathing hard. He wasn't shaking. He sounded like a man asking whether you wanted cream in your coffee. Nobody told him to stop. The thick-necked man looked at the 2 on the ground, looked at the fourth man's retreating back, looked at Liam Hayes standing in the dark with his empty hands and his grease-stained knuckles in his absolute inhuman stillness. "We'll find you," the man said. "Okay," Liam said. They left. He stood there until he couldn't hear them anymore, 2 cars starting up on the far side of the lot, headlights sweeping away toward the interstate, and then he exhaled slowly and walked over to the man on the ground. "Can you sit up?" "I've been sitting up since before you were born," the man said, and proved it by pushing himself upright with one arm in a motion that cost him something, though he didn't let it show in his face. Up close, the man was in his late 50s. Heavy jaw. Gray hair buzzed close on the sides, longer on top. A beard trimmed with the kind of precision that suggested it was the one vanity he allowed himself. His eyes were dark, and they were already assessing Liam in a way that felt less like gratitude and more like measurement. The leather vest had a patch on the back. Liam didn't look at it directly. He was focused on the cut above the man's ear, which was bleeding freely. "That needs pressure," Liam said. He pulled off his flannel overshirt, bunched it up, and held it out. The man looked at the shirt, looked at Liam. "I'm not going to put that on my head." "It's clean. It's got motor oil on the sleeve." "The collar is clean," Liam said. "Use the collar." The man held his gaze for a moment, then took the shirt and pressed the collar against his ear with a hand that didn't tremble at all, which told Liam he was either in very good shape or very good at not showing pain. Probably both. "You know who I am?" The man asked. "No," Liam said. "You know who those men were?" "No, but you stopped anyway." It wasn't a question. Liam answered it anyway. "Yeah." The man was quiet for a moment. He looked out toward the highway where the other cars had gone. "Stupid," he said finally. "Maybe," Liam said. "You want me to call someone? I've got a phone." "I've got a phone." "Okay." Liam stood up and walked to his truck and got out the small first aid kit he kept behind the seat, zip-tied to the roll bar, a habit from years of working with sharp metal in environments where you couldn't always run to a pharmacy. He came back, crouched down, and set it on the gravel next to the man without saying anything. The man looked at it. "You're a mechanic," he said. "Yeah." "Those tools in your truck, all yours?" "Some are the shop's." "What shop?" "Malone's, off Stockton Hill." The man nodded slowly. "I know Malone's. Old Ray's still running it. Ray retired 4 years ago. His nephew Danny runs it now. I'm the senior tech." "Senior tech," the man repeated, and something in his voice shifted, not mocking, more like he was filing information. "How old are you?" "And 26. The man made a sound that might have been a laugh, or might have been the wound talking. He pressed the flannel tighter against his ear. "You hit that man in the solar plexus with the butt end," he said. "Most people swing. You jabbed, like you knew exactly how much force you needed and didn't want to waste any extra." Liam shrugged. "Torque is torque." The man looked at him for a long moment. "What's your name?" Liam Hayes." "Iron Jack Mercer," the man said, and he said it the way a person says their name when they're used to it meaning something to whoever they're talking to. It didn't mean anything to Liam. "You need stitches," Liam said. "There's a 24-hour urgent care on Andy Devine. I can drive you." "I don't need a driver." "Your motorcycle's over there," Liam said. He'd noticed it during the fight, a Harley Street Glide, all black, parked at the edge of the lot at an angle that suggested it had been ridden fast and parked faster. "You ride that home tonight with a head wound, and you'll eat the center divider before you hit the first traffic light." Jack Mercer looked at the motorcycle. He was quiet. "I'll look at it while you get cleaned up," Liam said. "Make sure nothing got damaged." "Nobody touches my bike." "I'm not nobody, and I'm not asking." You want it checked or you want to find out what's wrong with it at 60 miles an hour? Another long pause. Liam was learning that Iron Jack Mercer used silence the way other men used words deliberately to see what you'd do in it. Liam didn't do anything in it. He just waited. Fine, Jack said. The urgent care was 7 minutes away. Liam drove while Jack sat in the passenger seat with the flannel pressed against his head, not speaking, looking straight ahead. The burrito was still on the seat between them. Jack looked at it once. You want that? Liam asked. No. Me neither. He dropped Jack at the door and came back to the parking lot. The Street Glide was still where it had been left. He walked around it once without touching it, then crouched down and ran his hands along the frame, the exhaust, the lower fork legs. He checked the brake lines by feel intact, checked the clutch cable, checked the throttle grip for play. He found a crack in the left saddlebag bracket that had probably been there before tonight, and he found something else. Tucked behind the left foot peg, wedged into the gap where the engine guard bolted to the frame, a small black device roughly the size and shape of a book of matches with a magnetic backing. He held it in his palm for a moment. He didn't know what it was exactly, but he knew what it wasn't. It wasn't factory. It wasn't aftermarket. It was something that had been put there on purpose by someone who didn't want Jack Mercer to know it was there. He was still holding it when Jack came out 40 minutes later with 6 stitches above his ear and a look on his face that said the urgent care staff had had a memorable evening. Liam held up the device. Jack went very still. Where? He said. Left foot peg, engine guard bolt. Jack took it from him without a word. He turned it over in his fingers, and the look on his face was not the look of a man seeing something unexpected. It was the look of a man seeing confirmation of something he'd feared. How long you think it's been there? Liam asked. Long enough, Jack said. He put it in his vest pocket. Looked at the bike, looked at Liam. You found that in the dark, he said, by feel. I check brake lines by feel, it's habit. What else did you find? Crack in the left saddlebag bracket. Hairline been there a while. You want it welded or replaced? I'd replace it, the metal's fatigued around it. Jack was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Are you working tomorrow? 7 a.m. I'll be there at 8. For the bracket. For the bracket, Jack said. But he said it in a way that meant something else entirely. He mounted the Street Glide slowly, not because he was afraid, but because his body was cataloging what tonight had cost it and sending him the invoice, and started it up. The engine turned over with a sound that Liam felt in his back teeth. Clean, properly tuned. Whoever maintained that bike knew what they were doing. Jack pulled to the edge of the lot and stopped. He didn't look back. Liam Hayes, he said just loud enough to carry. Yeah. Those men, the one you put down, the one you drove your elbow into. You could have broken his nose clean through. You didn't. Liam didn't say anything. Why not? Jack asked. Liam thought about it. Didn't need to. A pause. Didn't need to, Jack repeated to himself more than to Liam. Then he pulled out onto the highway and was gone. Liam stood in the empty lot for a minute. The heat was still there sitting on his shoulders. His flannel was somewhere inside the urgent care, presumably in a biohazard bag. He had a transmission casing in the bed of his truck, in a shop opening in 6 hours, and a mother at home who would notice he'd been out late and wouldn't say anything about it, which was somehow worse than if she said something. He got in the truck. He drove home. He checked on his mother. She was asleep, her breathing the slow, deep rhythm of the medication she took for her kidneys, the medication that cost $412 a month after insurance. He stood in the doorway of her room for a moment with his hand on the doorframe, listening. Then he went to bed. He didn't know that 11 seconds of footage from a gas station security camera had already been sent to 3 different numbers by a man named Cruz, who'd been recording from the shadow of a concrete pillar 30 feet away. He didn't know the footage had already been uploaded, already been shared, already been seen by 400 people and climbing fast. He didn't know that by the time his alarm went off at 6 the next morning, it would have been seen by 400,000. He slept. In the morning, the world was going to find him. And in the world that Iron Jack Mercer moved through, a world Liam Hayes had no framework for, yet no language for, no map of finding a man like Liam Hayes was not a small thing. It was a very, very significant thing. It was the kind of thing that changed the weather. He was 20 minutes into his shift the next morning, hadn't even pulled the transmission casing off the truck yet, was still on his first coffee, still rubbing sleep from the corner of one eye, when Danny Malone came into the bay with his phone out and his face doing something complicated. Liam, in a minute. No, I need you to. Danny, I said in a minute. Someone filmed you last night. Liam set his coffee down. He took the phone. The footage was 31 seconds long. The timestamp said 11:47 p.m. The angle was wide, the lighting was terrible, but the action was clear enough. You could see him get out of the truck. You could see the wrench. You could see those 11 seconds, and then you could see him crouch down next to the man on the ground. And then this was the part that apparently had sent the footage viral. This was the detail that people couldn't stop talking about in the comments. You could see him go to his truck, come back with the first aid kit, and set it down next to the man without saying a word. He watched it once, then again. How many views, he asked. Danny took the phone back, looked at the number. As of right now, Danny's voice had gone quiet. About 900,000. Liam picked up his coffee, set it down again because his hand was doing something it hadn't done last night. In the parking lot, it was shaking. Not much, but enough to notice. That'll be nothing by noon, Danny said. He was right. By noon, it was 4 million. By the time Iron Jack Mercer walked through the door of Malone's auto at 8:03 that morning, 1 hour after Liam had started his shift, 17 minutes after he'd seen the footage, 12 minutes after he'd turned off every notification on his phone, the parking lot outside already had 2 cars that didn't belong, one of them with a camera on a tripod in the back seat. Jack looked at the cars, looked at Liam. You seen the video? Jack said. Yeah. How you feeling about that? Liam picked up a socket wrench. I feel like I've got a transmission casing to swap. Jack watched him for a moment. Then he walked over to the Street Glide, which was up on the lift with the saddlebag bracket already removed. He looked at it. He looked at the crack Liam had described the night before now, visible in the morning light, a thin gray line running through the weld at an angle that proved fatigue, not impact. You did this first thing, Jack asked. It was on the list, Liam said. I didn't give you a list. I made my own. Another silence. Liam worked. Jack watched. Outside, another car pulled into the lot. Those men last night, Jack said, they weren't random. Liam didn't stop working. I figured. You figured. You ride alone to an empty lot off 66 at midnight. 4 men are waiting. They knew where you'd be. And you still got out of the truck. That's not my problem, Liam said. Who you are and why people want to hurt you, that's your business. What I saw was a man who was going to D if nobody did anything. That's not complicated. Jack Mercer sat down on a steel stool at the workbench. Slowly, his ribs clearly still speaking to him, and he put his hands on his knees and he looked at Liam. Haze the way you look at something you weren't expecting to find something you've been looking for without knowing you were looking. No, he said finally, it's really not. He reached into his vest. He set a business card on the workbench. It was plain white with a phone number and 2 words, Iron Jack. When you're done with my bike, he said, call that number. He stood up. Don't make me come back here to ask again, he said. I'm not good at asking twice. He walked out. Liam looked at the card for a long time. Outside, a news van was pulling into the lot. He put the card in his chest pocket, buttoned it shut, and went back to the transmission. The news van sat in the lot for 45 minutes before Danny Malone went out and told them they were blocking a service entrance and he'd have them towed if they didn't move. They moved. Then they parked on the street and pointed the camera at the front door anyway, which accomplished exactly nothing because Liam had locked the bay door from the inside and was working in silence with his phone face down on the bench. Danny came back in and stood there watching him for a moment. You're not going to talk to them, Danny said. It wasn't really a question. No, ma'am. They were going to write something anyway. They're going to write something anyway, Liam agreed. You could control what they say if you, Danny. Liam set down the socket wrench and looked at his boss directly. I got out of a truck and used a wrench. That's it. There's nothing to control. 2, Danny looked like he wanted to argue. He was 34, 3 years older than Liam, and he'd inherited the shop from his Uncle Ray, along with Ray's customers and Ray's lease, and Ray's very specific opinion about how a business should be run, which included the idea that any publicity was good publicity. He looked at the news van outside, then back at Liam. It's 9 million views now, Danny said. Oh, Liam didn't answer. 9 million, Liam, since last night. I know the number. Do you understand what that... I understand what it means, Liam said. It means people on the internet watched a video. It doesn't mean anything happened. He picked up the socket wrench. The transmission isn't going to swap itself. Danny left him alone. By 11, it wasn't just the one news van. There were 3 vehicles on the street, and someone had called the shop 4 times with a number Liam didn't recognize. He let all 4 go to voicemail. The first message was from a local TV affiliate wanting a comment. The second was from someone identifying themselves as a producer at a cable news network, same request. The third was a podcast host who said he had 3 million subscribers and wanted to fly Liam to Los Angeles, all expenses paid. The fourth message was different. It was a woman's voice. Older. Careful. She identified herself as a journalist, but not in the way the others had, not leading with her outlet or her subscriber count. She said her name was Patricia Wren, and she'd been covering motorcycle club culture for 11 years. And she said one sentence that made Liam play the message back 3 times. The men who attacked Iron Jack Mercer last night, 2 of them have been identified. You should know their names before someone else decides to introduce themselves. He stared at his phone for a long moment. Then he called Danny over and told him to lock the front door. What, why? Lock the front door, Danny. Something in his voice got through. Danny locked the front door. Liam called the number back. Patricia Wren picked up on the second ring like she'd been holding the phone. Mr. Hayes? Who are they? Liam said. I appreciate you calling back. Most people in your situation wouldn't. Who are they? A pause. The kind of pause where someone decides how much to say. The man you put down, the one in the canvas jacket, she said. His name is Derek Solis. He's a freelance contractor. The kind of contractor that doesn't file taxes and gets hired by people who need things done quietly. The man with him, the one who reached into his jacket, is named Randall Cook. He has a history with Kingman, specifically with a real estate portfolio that's been expanding in Mojave County for the last 3 years. Another pause. Iron Jack Mercer owns 3 parcels on the west side of town, has for 15 years. There's been pressure to sell. He hasn't sold. Liam stood very still. You're saying this wasn't random. I told you it wasn't random. You told me 2 of them have been identified. What about the other 2? That's what I'm still working on, Patricia said. And that's why I'm calling you Mr. Hayes. Not for a quote. I want you to understand what you walked into last night. Because whoever hired Solis and Cook, they've seen that video too. And unlike the 9 million people watching it because they think it's inspiring, these particular viewers are watching it for a very different reason. Liam's jaw tightened. They want to know who I am. They already know who you are. Your truck's plates are visible in the first 4 seconds of the footage. It took someone with basic resources about 40 minutes to get your name, your employer, and your home address. She stopped. Let that land. I'm not trying to frighten you. You're doing a pretty good job of it. Good, she said. Frightened people pay attention. Mr. Hayes, I've been reporting on this county for 4 years. What's happening in Mojave County right now is not simple. It involves money and land and people who are used to things going the way they want them to go. Iron Jack Mercer is one of the only people who's been willing to hold a line. Last night was not the first attempt. It was just the first one that got filmed. Liam looked at the locked front door. On the other side of it, 3 camera crews were pointing lenses at a building where a man was standing in an auto bay trying to understand how a transmission swap had turned into this. What do you want from me? He asked. Right now, nothing. I just want you to have my number. And I want you to be careful. She hung up. He stood there holding the phone, and for the first time since the previous night, he felt something cold move through him. Not fear exactly, something more specific than fear, the particular awareness of a situation that was larger than it had looked from the outside, the way you sometimes pull a panel off an engine, expecting a simple repair, and find that something structural has been compromised, something load-bearing, something that changes everything about the job. He was still standing there when his phone rang again. Unknown number. He almost didn't pick up. Then he picked up. Liam Hayes. The voice was male, older, and it had a texture to it, the specific roughness of someone who'd spent decades in loud environments and had the vocal cords to prove it. My name is Marcus Webb. The name hit him somewhere in the chest. He knew that name. Every mechanic who'd grown up in the Southwest knew that name. Marcus Webb had built the engine that set a land speed record at Bonneville in 1987 and another one in 1993. He had a shop in Tucson that people drove from 3 states away to bring their machines to. He was 62 years old and had never taught a class, never written a book, never done a single interview, and had turned down a full professorship from an engineering school in California with 2 words, no thanks, according to the story that had passed through the trade like scripture. Mr. Webb, Liam said, and his voice came out younger than he wanted it to. I watched the video, Webb said. Not the part where you use the wrench, the part after. What part after? The part where you check the brake lines by feel before you even check the body of the bike. A pause. In the dark. Liam didn't say anything. You found the tracker, Webb said. Yeah. In the dark. Yeah. How long you been working on bikes? I started on cars. Got into bikes about 4 years ago. We get more walk-in bike work than Danny expected when he took over, so I learned. Who taught you? Books mostly, some YouTube. Trial and error. A silence that Liam couldn't read. Trial and error, Marcus Webb said to himself. Is there something I can help you with, Mr. Webb? Jack called me this morning, Webb said. He told me what you did. Not what's on the video, what you did before and after. The wrench fine, that's instinct. But the kit, checking the bike, finding what you found. Another pause. He asked me to call you. He told me to call him. I know he wanted me to call first. Webb's voice shifted slightly. I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer it honestly and without thinking about what the right answer is. Just what's true, okay? When you checked those brake lines, was that procedure or was that something else? Liam thought about it, not for long. Both them, he said. It's procedure because it's habit. But with that bike specifically, something felt off when I walked around it. The weight distribution was wrong, not much, but enough. I wanted to know why. And the tracker was behind the foot peg, small, magnetic backing, but it had a physical weight to it, plus whoever put it there disturbed some road grime around the mount. That's what I felt when I ran my hand along the guard. The grime pattern was wrong. A long silence. How long have you been a senior tech, Webb asked. 4 years at Malone's, 2 years before that at a place in Flagstaff. You're 26. You sound like Jack. Jack's not wrong very often, Webb said. Then without transition, I'm going to ask you something and you don't have to answer. But I want you to think about it before you say no. A beat. Have you ever thought about what you could do with your hands if you had the right materials and the right environment and someone who knew how to direct it? Liam leaned against the workbench. Everyone thinks about that, he said. Not everyone has hands like yours. You've never seen my hands. I've seen how they move, Webb said. The video, you adjusted the torque mid-swing. You weren't thinking about it, you just did it. That's not learned behavior, Mr. Hayes. That's kinesthetic intelligence. It's extremely rare, and most people who have it spend their whole lives in situations too small for what they're capable of. Liam's throat was tight. He didn't know why, exactly. My mother's sick, he said. It came out of nowhere. He hadn't meant to say it. Webb didn't miss a beat. I know. Jack told you. Jack did his homework this morning. What does she have? Chronic kidney disease, stage 3, but it moves. The medication's expensive. I have good days and bad days with the insurance. He stopped. Why does that matter to this conversation? Because I want you to know what's on the table before you decide anything. Webb said simply, nothing's been offered. Something's about to be. Liam put his hand flat on the workbench and felt the cold metal under his palm, the way he sometimes did when he needed to ground himself in something physical and real. Mr. Webb, he said carefully, Jack told me to call him. You called me instead. What does that tell me? A pause, and then Marcus Webb did something Liam hadn't heard from him yet. He laughed, short, genuine, like something had surprised him. It tells you Jack trusts my judgment more than his own in situations like this, he said. He's a man of action. I'm a man who reads people. And I wanted to read you before he made his offer, because once he makes it, it doesn't come back. What's the offer? Come to Tucson, Webb said. Saturday. Come to my shop. Bring your tools if you want. Leave them if you don't. Just come and see, and then decide. Decide what? Whether you want to be part of something that actually fits what you are. The bay was quiet. Outside, Liam could hear the low mutter of the news crews on the street, could hear Danny moving around in the front office, could hear the Arizona heat pressing against the walls of the building like it always did, like it had his whole life, like it was going to keep doing whether he made this decision or any other one. I'll think about it, Liam said. Don't think too long, Webb said. Things are moving. He hung up. Liam set the phone down and looked at the street glide on the lift with the saddlebag bracket still off. He thought about Webb's question, what you could do with your hands if you had the right materials, and he thought about his mother's medication and the stack of bills on the kitchen counter that she kept turned face down because she didn't want him to see her looking at them. He thought about the tracker behind the foot peg. He thought about Patricia Wren saying they already know who you are. He thought about Derek Solis and Randall Cook, and two more names he didn't have yet, and about the real estate portfolio expanding across Mojave County, like something spreading under the surface. He picked up the socket wrench and went back to work. He needed to think, and he thought best with his hands moving. He was deep in the transmission swap, had it half out, was working on the crossmember bolts when he heard the knock at the bay door. Not Danny's knock, heavier, a specific rhythm, three short and one long, like a signal. He set down the wrench and went to the door. He opened it. There were four of them. Not the four from last night, different men entirely. They were wearing vests, different patch than Jack's different chapter, but the general language was clear enough. These were not men who'd come to get their oil changed. The one at the front was in his 40s, thick through the shoulders with a look on his face that was not hostile, but was absolutely not friendly either. He looked at Liam the way you look at something you've heard about, but weren't sure you believed. Liam Hayes, he said, yeah, we need to talk. About the fact that you've got two local reporters on the street and a camera trained on your front door, and you're standing in a bay that doesn't have a back exit, the man said. And about the fact that the people who hired Solis last night are not happy about the video. Liam's hand tightened on the bay door. Who are you? He said. My name's Ruiz. I write out a Flagstaff chapter. He held Liam's gaze. Jack called us. Jack told me to call him. Jack also had a conversation this morning that changed his timeline, Ruiz said. Solis and Cook were picked up about an hour ago, not by the police, by people we're not sure about yet. That's a problem because they were the cleanest link to whoever hired them. Liam stared at him. They were picked up, he said slowly, as in taken. As in they're gone and nobody's talking about it, Ruiz said, which means whoever is behind last night has the resources to make two men disappear from Kingman, Arizona in broad daylight within 18 hours of a failed job. He paused. And they've seen a video of your face. The cold thing moved through Liam again, sharper this time. Jack wants to meet, Ruiz said. Not at the shop, somewhere clean, tonight. And if I say no, Ruiz looked at him for a moment, not threatening, just honest. Then you go home to your mother tonight and you pretend none of this happened, he said. And you wait and see whether the people looking for Solis find you first or Jack finds them first. That's a real option. I'm not going to tell you it isn't. He put his hand in his vest pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. But Jack asked me to give you this before you decide. Liam took the paper, unfolded it. It wasn't a note. It was a photograph printed on regular paper, low quality, but clear enough. It showed a building, a shop much larger than Malone's with two hydraulic lifts visible through the open bay doors and equipment that Liam recognized from catalog pages he'd studied the way other people studied magazines. At the bottom of the photograph in Jack's handwriting, blunt, heavy strokes, no wasted motion, 3 words. This could be yours. Liam stood there with the photograph in his hand and Ruiz watching him from the doorway, and the sun pressing down on Kingman like it had a personal grievance, and the news crew still on the street, and his phone in his pocket, with Marcus Webb's number in it, and his mother at home, with her medication on the shelf and her bills turned face down on the kitchen counter. He folded the photograph carefully and put it in his chest pocket next to the business card. What time tonight? He said. Ruiz almost smiled. 8, where he handed Liam a second piece of paper, an address. Come alone, Ruiz said. Don't tell the reporters. Don't tell your boss. Don't post anything. I don't post anything. I know, Ruiz said. Jack checked. He and the other 3 walked back to their bikes. They rode out with a sound that turned heads on the street, and Liam watched them go, and then he went back and locked the bay door and sat on the steel stool at the workbench where Jack had sat that morning. He looked at the transmission half out of the vehicle on the lift. He looked at his hands. He thought about what Marcus Webb had said. Most people who have it spend their whole lives in situations too small for what they're capable of. And he thought about how that sentence had landed somewhere very specific, somewhere he didn't usually let things land. He thought about his father who died when Liam was 11 and who'd been a mechanic too. Not a great one, but a man who'd loved machines with the particular love of someone who understood that a machine done right was a kind of honesty, every piece doing exactly what it was meant to do. No more, no less, nothing. Hidden, nothing pretending to be something it wasn't. He thought about an old man named Hector Castillo who'd given a 15-year-old kid with no father and no direction access to a shop on Beale Street, and taught him what torque meant and what patience meant and what it meant to finish it on, right? Even when finishing it right took longer than finishing it fast. He thought about Hector now, 68 years old, running a one-bay operation out of a building with a roof that leaked when it rained and equipment that hadn't been updated since the 90s, turning away work he couldn't handle because he didn't have the tools for it. He sat with all of that. Then he stood up, went back to the transmission, and finished the job. At 5:30, he washed his hands, really washed them with the orange industrial soap 3 times, and he went out to the front office where Danny was closing up. "I need tomorrow off," Liam said. Danny looked at him. "Liam, personal matter. I'll make up the hours." "It's not the hours I'm worried about," Danny said. "Those reporters have been here all day. 2 of them knocked on the door. I've been getting calls. Tell them I don't have any comment." "I've been telling them that." "Then keep telling them." Liam picked up his keys. "Danny, I'm fine. I'll be here day after tomorrow. Don't worry about it." He drove home. His mother was in the kitchen when he got there. She was 61 and she moved carefully these days with the deliberate economy of someone who'd learned that some movements cost more than others. She looked at him when he came through the door with the same look she'd been giving him since he was small, reading him the way he read engines, checking for things that weren't right. "You're on the news," she said. "I know. They're saying you saved someone." "I used a wrench," Liam said. "It's not as dramatic as they're making it." She looked at him for a long moment. She didn't push. She never pushed. It was one of the things about her he was most grateful for and most burdened by simultaneously, her absolute unwillingness to ask for more than he offered, even when she clearly wanted to. "Sit down," she said. "I made soup." He sat down. She set a bowl in front of him and sat across from him with her tea, and for a few minutes neither of them said anything, and the kitchen was warm and quiet and ordinary in a way that felt right now almost painful in its goodness. "Mom," he said, if something changed, if things got different." "The money situation." She looked at him over her tea. "What kind of different?" "Better," he said. "Different and better." She set the cup down. Her hands were steady. She had good days and bad days with that, and this was a good day, and he was glad. "What did you get yourself into, Liam?" she asked quietly. He looked at his soup, then at her. "I don't know yet," he said honestly, "but I think maybe something found me." She was quiet for a moment. Outside, a car went by slowly. He tensed, then relaxed when it kept going. "Your father used to say that," she said, "that the right things find you if you don't hide." He hadn't expected that. It moved through him like a current. "Yeah," he said. "Yeah, he did." She picked up her tea again. "Eat your soup," she said, "and whatever it is, be careful." He ate. He was careful with his face. But in his chest pocket against his ribs, he could feel the weight of the business card and the photograph. And at 8 o'clock, he was going to drive to an address on a piece of paper and sit across from Iron Jack Mercer and find out exactly what was on the table. And somewhere in Tucson, Marcus Webb was waiting. And somewhere in Mojave County, 2 men named Solis and Cook had disappeared in broad daylight. And 9 million people had watched 31 seconds of footage of a mechanic from Kingman who just couldn't drive away. He finished his soup, he washed the bowl, he kissed his mother on the top of the head. Then he went to his room and sat on the edge of his bed and looked at his hands in the low light, front and back the way you look at tools before a job, assessing, checking, making sure everything was where it needed to be. At 7:45, he got up, put on his jacket, and walked out the door. The address Ruiz had given him was a ranch property 12 miles outside Kingman, down a county road that turned to packed dirt after the first mile and a half. Liam drove it with his headlights on low and his windows down, and the desert on both sides of him was absolutely dark and absolutely quiet, in the way that only desert got, not peaceful exactly, but indifferent, the way things are when they have been around long enough to stop caring about individual outcomes. He almost missed the turn. There was no mailbox, no reflector, just a gap in the scrub that became a driveway when you committed to it. He committed. There were 6 motorcycles parked outside a low building with light coming through the windows. 2 men he didn't recognize were standing outside, and they watched him pull up and get out of the truck without saying anything, which was either a good sign or a very bad one, and he didn't spend time deciding which. He walked to the door and knocked. Jack opened it himself. He looked better than he had at the urgent care color, back in his face the stitches hidden under a small bandage above his ear, moving without the careful economy of a man managing pain. He looked at Liam for a moment, then stepped back and let him in. The room had a table, 8 chairs, 6 men, and enough tension to strip paint. Liam recognized Ruiz from that afternoon. The others were strangers, different ages, different builds, all wearing vests, all watching him with the same careful attention Jack had used at the urgent care, the kind of attention that wasn't hostile, but didn't have any give in it either. Sit down, Jack said. Liam sat. Jack sat across from him. He put his hands flat on the table. Big hands scarred the hands of someone who'd built and broken things in equal measure for a very long time. I'm going to tell you some things, Jack said. Some of it you've already figured out, some of it you haven't. When I'm done, you can ask questions or you can walk out that door. Either is acceptable. What's not acceptable is you sitting on what I tell you and making decisions later that put you or your mother in a bad position because you didn't have the full picture. Clear, Liam said. Jack nodded. The men who attacked me last night work for a man named Gerald Pruitt. He runs a development company called Cornerstone Pacific out of Phoenix. In the last 4 years, Cornerstone has acquired significant land holdings in Mojave County, some of it purchased clean, some of it acquired through methods that don't hold up well to scrutiny. The parcels I own on the west side of town are the last significant barrier to a corridor they need for a logistics development they've been quietly permitting for 18 months. He paused. I've been offered money 3 times. I've said no 3 times. Last night was Pruitt's way of moving from conversation to action. How do you know it's Pruitt? Liam asked. Because Randall Cook has been on Pruitt's payroll in an informal capacity since 2019. Ruiz said from the end of the table. We've been watching Pruitt for a while. Solis and Cook, Liam said. Patricia Wren told me they were picked up this morning. The room got quiet in a particular way. Jack looked at Liam with something new in his expression. You talked to Wren, Jack said. It wasn't quite a question. She called me. She knew their names before most people could have pulled the footage. Patricia Wren has been building a case against Pruitt for 2 years, Jack said. She's good. She's also in a position that's become dangerous, which is why she's talking to people like you instead of publishing. He held Liam's gaze. Cook and Solis being gone is significant. It means Pruitt moved fast to cut the link, which means he's worried. Worried about what? The video. The video put your face everywhere, Jack said. But more importantly, it put the story everywhere. Before last night, Pruitt's play was quiet. Land deals permits pressure. Nothing that made the front page. Now there's a viral video of 4 men attacking someone in a Kingman parking lot, and the 2 men who've been identified have a documented connection to a Phoenix developer who happens to be buying up land in the same county. He sat back. Pruitt doesn't like daylight. The video gave him a lot of it. Liam turned this over carefully. And I'm in the video. You're in the video, Jack said, which makes you relevant to Pruitt's problem in 2 ways. First, you're a witness who can identify Solis and Cook by voice and physical description. Second, he paused. The way you handled yourself last night has attracted attention from people other than Pruitt, and that attention is something Pruitt can't ignore. What people? Liam said. Jack looked at him steadily. Me, Marcus, the network we operate within, which brings me to why you're sitting at this table instead of talking to a reporter on your front porch. He reached to his right and slid a folder across the table. Liam opened it. Inside were 2 documents. The first was a service contract, mechanical consultation, maintenance, and technical support for a fleet of vehicles. The compensation figure was more than Liam made in a year at Malone's. More than 2 years if he was being precise. The second document was a medical coverage agreement. His mother's name was on it, her exact diagnosis. The coverage was comprehensive, including the specialist in Phoenix that her regular doctor had mentioned twice, and she'd refused to pursue because of the cost. Liam closed the folder. He didn't reach for it. He didn't push it back. He just set his hands flat on the table the same way Jack had and looked across. You had her diagnosis, Liam said. I had her name, Jack said. Medical records are easy when you know the right people. That's not something I love, Liam said, and his voice was level, but the message was clear. Fair, Jack said. I'm not apologizing for it. I needed to understand what you were working with before I made an offer I couldn't take back. And Hector Castillo, Liam said. A brief silence. Ruiz shifted in his chair. One of the other men looked at Jack. Jack's expression didn't change, but something in it did, some layer of it, some underlying thing. What about him? He's the reason I know how to do anything worth doing with my hands, Liam said. He's 68. He's running a shop on Beale Street with a roof that leaks and a lift that's 12 years past its service date. He turned down retirement because he's got nowhere to go and nothing to retire to. He looked at Jack directly. I'm not signing anything until you tell me what Hector's situation looks like if I say yes to yours. The room was quiet. Jack looked at Liam for a long time. Liam let him look. He'd learned in the last 18 hours that Jack used silence as an instrument to measure, to test, to understand what a man was made of when nothing was filling the space. Liam let the silence be what it was and didn't try to fill it. What are you asking for? Jack said. I'm not asking for anything extravagant. I want Hector's shop made viable equipment that works a roof that doesn't let in the rain and whatever referral pipeline or business support your network can provide to keep it running. I want him to finish his career with dignity. He doesn't need to know where it comes from. Liam paused. That's not a negotiation, that's a condition. One of the men at the table, older gray ponytail, hadn't spoken since Liam walked in, made a sound that was almost a laugh. Jack looked at him briefly, then back at Liam. You know what the funny thing is, Jack said, is that you're sitting in a room with 6 men who have between them done things considerably more dangerous than what you did last night, and none of them have ever sat at this table and opened with a condition. I'm not trying to impress anyone, Liam said. I know, Jack said. That's exactly why it's impressive. He looked at the folder on the table. Hector Castillo gets what he needs. I'll make the calls tomorrow. It'll take 2 weeks to arrange without attracting attention, but it gets done. You have my word. Your word, Liam said. That's all I've got to offer, Jack said. In my world, it's the only currency that means anything. You can take it or leave it. Liam looked at the folder. He thought about his mother's name on that medical document, and about Hector's leaking roof, and about Marcus Webb's voice on the phone that morning, saying most people spend their whole lives in situations too small for what they're capable of. He thought about his father, who'd loved machines because they were honest. Tell me what the work actually is, Liam said. Not the contract language, the actual work. Jack nodded like this was the question he'd been waiting for. The network operates a large fleet. Motorcycles, obviously, but also trucks, service vehicles, equipment. Most of it maintained in-house by people who are competent but not exceptional. There are also specific technical projects builds, restorations, modifications that require a level of precision our current people don't have. He leaned forward. Marcus Webb has been my technical director in an unofficial capacity for 11 years. He's at a point where he wants to hand that off to someone he believes in. He watched your video. He called you and then he called me, and what he said was, I'm going to give you his exact words. Jack, I've been looking for that kid for 30 years. Liam's throat tightened again. He kept his face still. There's also the other matter, Ruiz said from the end of the table. Jack glanced at him, then at Liam. Gerald Pruitt, what about him? He's going to come at you. Jack said flatly. Not tonight, not tomorrow. But he's already established that you're connected to this situation, and he's going to want to know whether you're a liability. What that looks like, we don't know yet. Could be legal harassment pressure on your employer, manufactured complaints to licensing boards. Could be something else. He paused. If you're inside our network, you have a degree of protection that you don't have right now. People know not to move on someone wearing our support. It's not a guarantee, but it's a significant deterrent. And if I'm not inside your network, Liam said, then you're a 26-year-old mechanic in a small town who got famous on the internet for 31 seconds, Jack said. And Pruitt has lawyers and money and patience. The words were not a threat. They were simply the landscape laid out plainly, which Liam found he respected more than any version of comfort would have been. I want to meet with Webb before I sign anything, Liam said. Saturday, Jack said immediately. Tucson, he's expecting you. I already told him I'd think about it. I know. He told me you said that. Something that was almost a smile crossed Jack's face. I'll think about it is what polite people say when they have already decided yes and want time to verify the decision. Liam said nothing. Am I wrong? Jack asked. A pause. No, Liam said. Jack reached across the table and extended his hand. Not with the folder, not with the contract. Just his hand, the old way, the way that meant something different from paperwork. Liam shook it. The grip was strong and brief, and there was nothing theatrical about it. 2 men shaking hands in a room in the Arizona desert, which was both the smallest thing in the world, and in some way Liam couldn't fully articulate yet, the largest thing that had happened to him in a long time. One more thing, Jack said, and he didn't let go immediately. His eyes were direct. You asked me nothing about what we are, what we do, what being connected to this network means for your life. I know what the patch means, Liam said. Most people think they do. I'm not signing on to anything I don't understand, Liam said. Web's on Saturday. I'll learn what I need to learn. If at any point what I learn changes the picture, I'll tell you directly. I won't disappear. Jack released his hand. Good, he said. Disappearing's for people who don't have the stomach for honest conversations. He stood in the room, stood with him, and Liam understood that the meeting was over. He was almost to the door when Ruiz said his name. He turned. Ruiz held up his phone. On the screen was a news article pulled up in Zoom so the headline was clear. Local station posted 40 minutes ago. Kingman mechanic at center of viral video. Linked to land dispute investigation, sources say. Liam read it twice. Patricia Wren, he said. No byline, Ruiz said. But the sourcing is sloppy. Someone fed this to a local stringer. It's not Wren's work. It's too fast and too thin. Someone wanted this out there tonight. Pruitt, Jack said from behind Liam. Liam looked at the article again. His name was in the second paragraph. His employer, the footage. And then a line at the end that made the muscles in his jaw tighten. Sources indicate Hayes may have prior knowledge of the dispute and was not present at the scene by chance. They're trying to paint me as part of it, Liam said. They're trying to muddy the story before it gets legs, Jack said. If you're not a bystander, then you're a participant. If you're a participant, the video stops being about four men attacking an innocent person and starts being about a conflict between parties. He paused. It's smart. Not smart enough, but smart. What do I do? Nothing tonight, Jack said. Tomorrow, if anyone calls reporters, police, anyone, you say nothing without a lawyer present. I'll have someone call you in the morning. I don't need your lawyer. You need a lawyer, Jack said. Whether it's mine or someone else's is up to you. But you need one by morning because by morning this article is going to have been picked up by 3 outlets in Phoenix and the dynamic of your situation will have changed. Liam stood in the doorway with the night air coming in behind him. Jack, he said, the tracker on your bike. Whatever it transmitted, location data, timing data, whoever had the receiver end of that has a record of where you've been. Jack looked at him. I know, he said. Do you know how long it was there? Working on that? If it's been there more than a week, Liam said, then Pruitt has movement patterns, meeting locations. He knows what roads you use and what times and who you meet with. The room was very quiet. Including this address, Ruiz said. Jack turned and looked at Ruiz. Something passed between them that Liam couldn't read. How long would it take someone to get here from Kingman if they were already moving? Jack asked the room. Nobody answered immediately, which was itself an answer. 25 minutes on the county road, Liam said. 12 if they came across the flats. Jack made a decision in about 3 seconds. Liam recognized the speed of it, the same speed he'd gotten out of the truck 2 nights ago, the speed of someone whose instincts were calibrated. We move, Jack said. Not loud, not panicked, just a fact delivered to a room that received it the same way. The 6 men were on their feet and organized in under a minute, which told Liam this was not the first time this particular room had cleared on short notice. Ruiz was on his phone. 2 men went out the back. 1 stayed near the front window. Jack looked at Liam. Your truck is outside, he said. Yeah. You can leave now. Go home. This is not your situation. Liam looked at him. You said the tracker was behind the foot peg. Yes. Who checked your bike before last night? Who would have had access to the engine guard bolt? Jack went still. My regular mechanic, he said slowly. Shop in Bullhead City. When was the last service? A pause that lasted a beat too long. 3 weeks ago, Jack said. Then it's been transmitting for 3 weeks, Liam said, which means they knew about every meeting, every location, every... He stopped. Does anyone else in your network use that shop? The man at the window turned around. Ruiz lowered his phone. Jack's face did something complicated and controlled the face of a man, absorbing a significant piece of information and not allowing it to change his posture. Ruiz, he said quietly. Already on it, Ruiz said and stepped outside. Jack looked at Liam. You figured that out just now. It was the obvious question, Liam said. It wasn't obvious to anyone else in this room. Everyone else in this room was thinking about Pruitt, Liam said. I was thinking about the bike. Jack looked at him for a moment. Then he said, Go home, Liam. Take a different route than you came. Don't stop. And Saturday. Saturday is still Saturday, Jack said. More important now, not less. He put his hand briefly on Liam's shoulder. Not paternal, not dramatic, just solid and sure, the way you touch something you intend to take care of. Go. Liam went. He drove home on the long route through the edge of town rather than the highway, and he watched his mirrors the whole way with the calm attention of someone doing a job, not with the ragged alertness of someone afraid. And he wasn't sure which of those things was more unsettling, the fear or the absence of it. His mother's light was off when he got home. He stood in the dark kitchen for a moment. Then he got a glass of water and sat at the kitchen table and pulled out the two pieces of paper from his chest pocket, the business card and the photograph, and laid them flat on the table in front of him. The photograph showed the shop in Tucson. He looked at it in the low light for a long time, not with longing exactly, but with the clear-eyed recognition of someone who understood what they were looking at. That shop had the kind of equipment that made certain jobs possible that were otherwise impossible. It had space and resources, and if Marcus Webb was in it, a standard of craft that almost nobody in the Southwest was working at. And outside this kitchen, somewhere in Kingman or Phoenix or Bullhead City, there was a man named Gerald Pruitt who had just realized that the mechanic in the viral video was connected to the one person he'd been trying to remove for 3 years, and that the mechanic had found the tracker, and that the mechanic had a mind that worked in ways that complicated the picture considerably. Liam put the photograph and the card back in his pocket. He went to bed. He lay in the dark and thought about his father saying that the right things find you if you don't hide, and about Marcus Webb saying his hands knew more than his words, and about Iron Jack Mercer saying go home with his hand on Liam's shoulder in a way that meant something closer to come back. He thought about Hector Castillo and a roof that leaked when it rained. He closed his eyes. And 3 miles away in a parking lot, he couldn't see a man he didn't know yet was photographing his truck's license plate from a phone, sending it to a number in Phoenix, and receiving in return a single word: confirmed. He found out about the photograph of his truck at 6:47 in the morning when Patricia Wren called him before his alarm went off. He picked up because he'd saved her number, and because in the last 48 hours she'd proven to be the one person feeding him information that turned out to be accurate before it mattered rather than after. "They've been watching your house," she said, no preamble. Liam sat up. "Since when?" "I don't know exactly. I got a tip an hour ago from someone who saw a car parked on your street last night that didn't belong to the neighborhood. Dark blue Tahoe, no plates visible. It was gone by 5 a.m. She paused. "It's confirmation that Pruitt's people have made you a priority." He was already standing, moving to the window. The street was empty. Normal. Morning quiet. "The article last night," he said. "I saw it. That's not my work." "I know. Jack said it came from someone feeding a stringer. Pruitt's people trying to muddy the narrative." A brief silence. "You met with Jack last night." "That's not something I'm going to confirm or deny to a journalist." "Fair," she said immediately. "Then let me tell you what I know, and you can do what you want with it. Pruitt has a meeting in Phoenix today with the county permitting office. Routine on the surface, but the timing is interesting given what happened 2 nights ago. My read is he's trying to accelerate the corridor permit before the story gets big enough to attract regulatory attention." Another pause. "If that permit goes through, the land dispute becomes considerably harder to fight. Jack's parcels can be condemned under certain infrastructure provisions if the corridor is officially designated." Liam's jaw tightened. "How long does he have?" "The meeting's at 2. Permits at that level don't get approved same day, but preliminary authorization can be granted, which is essentially the first domino. Once that falls, the legal process becomes very difficult to interrupt." She stopped. "I'm telling you this because you're in the story whether you want to be or not, and people who are in a story without understanding it tend to make decisions that hurt them." "What do you need from me?" he asked. "Nothing right now," she said, "but I want you to keep my number close. If anything happens today, anything that feels off, anyone you don't recognize approaching you, call me before you call anyone else." "Why before anyone else?" "Because I've been watching Pruitt for 2 years and I know how he operates," she said. "And because the lawyer Jack's going to send you this morning has a conflict of interest I think you should know about before you let him in the door." Liam went very still. "What conflict?" "His firm has done work for Cornerstone Pacific. Not recently and not directly on the Mojave County project, but the connection exists. I don't know if Jack knows. I don't know if it's intentional. But you should know." She hung up. He stood in his room for a moment. Then he got dressed, moved to the kitchen, started coffee, and called Jack before the pot finished brewing. Jack answered on the first ring, which meant he hadn't slept or had slept very little, which in turn meant the situation at the ranch had developed after Liam left. "The lawyer you're sending me," Liam said. "What firm?" A pause of about 2 seconds. Holloway and Crane. Why? They've done work for Cornerstone Pacific. Silence. The particular silence of a man recalibrating. Who told you that? Jack asked. Does it matter? It matters because if it's accurate, I was either given bad information or someone in my circle made a decision without my knowledge, and both of those are significant problems. It's accurate, Liam said. Verify it yourself. I will. Jack's voice was flat and controlled, but something underneath it had shifted. Not anger exactly, something colder. I'll send someone else. Give me 2 hours. Jack, Liam hesitated. Pruitt has a permitting meeting in Phoenix at 2. Another silence. Longer this time. Who's your source? Jack asked. Someone who's been watching him longer than you have, Liam said. The preliminary authorization on the corridor permit. If he gets it today, what does that do to your position? Jack exhaled slowly. It makes the next 6 months very expensive and very complicated. It doesn't end it, but it changes the math significantly. A pause. How do you know about the corridor? Because I've been paying attention, Liam said. That's what you wanted, right? Someone who pays attention. A sound that was almost a laugh, but not quite. Yeah, Jack said. That's what I wanted. So what do we do about 2 o'clock? We don't do anything about 2 o'clock, Jack said, and his voice had the particular firmness of someone drawing a line they intend to hold. You go to work, you talk to the new lawyer when she arrives, and you stay inside the building. What happens in Phoenix today is not your problem. But, Liam, the tone changed. Not hard, but definite. You've been in this situation for 48 hours. There are things in motion that started long before you were in the picture, and there are people handling them who've been doing this for years. Your job right now is to not become a liability by moving too fast. A pause. Can you do that? He wanted to argue. He recognized the impulse and assessed it and let it go. Yeah, he said. Good. Lawyer's name is Sandra Okafor. She'll be at the shop by 9. She's not connected to any of this. She's out of Flagstaff. She's good, and she owes me a favor that predates Cornerstone Pacific by about a decade. He hung up. Liam drank his coffee. His mother came out in her robe and looked at him the way she always did, reading the room before reading the person. You're up early, she said. Couldn't sleep. She looked at him for a moment, then went to the cabinet and got her own cup without saying anything else. They sat at the kitchen table together in the morning quiet, and Liam was aware with a specificity that surprised him of how much he wanted to protect this exact thing, this kitchen, this woman, this ordinary silence. Mom, he said, if someone calls today, someone you don't know, don't answer. She looked at him over her cup. And if someone comes to the door, don't open it. Call me. She set her cup down. Liam Michael Hayes, she said, which was how he knew it was serious. What exactly did you get into 2 nights ago? He looked at her. He made a decision. Something bigger than I expected, he said, but I'm handling it, and it's going to make things better for us. I need you to trust me for a few more days. She held his gaze. She had the same eyes he had, same color, same directness, the eyes of someone who'd learned early that a looking away was expensive. I've trusted you since you were 11 years old and told me you'd figure out how to fix the car yourself, she said. You did then. I'll trust you now. She picked up her cup and stood. But Liam, she said from the doorway, whatever this is, don't let it cost you who you are. Money and protection are one thing. What you are is another. Don't trade one for the other. He sat with that for a long time after she left. Sandra Okafor arrived at Malone's at 8:55, which was 4 minutes before the shop opened, and 5 minutes before a man Liam didn't recognize drove slowly past the front of the building in a dark Tahoe with no front plates. He clocked the car from the bay window. He didn't react visibly. He noted it. Sandra was 41, precise, and had the manner of someone who assessed every room in about 4 seconds and stored the assessment efficiently. She shook his hand, looked at his grease-stained knuckles without comment, and sat across from him in Danny's office with a yellow legal pad and a recorder she asked permission to use. Jack tells me you need general counsel for a situation that's developing rapidly, she said. That's one way to put it. What's your way? There's a viral video of me. 2 men in it have disappeared. A developer who may have arranged the attack in the video is trying to reframe the narrative to implicate me. I've been offered employment by the man who was attacked, and last night someone was watching my house from an unplated vehicle. He paused. That's the summary. Sandra looked at him for a moment. She clicked the recorder on. Start from the beginning, she said. All of it. He started from the beginning. He was organized and precise and left nothing out except the address of the ranch and the specific details of Jack's network, which Sandra didn't ask about and he didn't offer. She listened without interrupting, taking notes in a handwriting so small it looked like code. When he finished, she reviewed her notes for a moment without speaking. The article that placed you in the land dispute, she said. Did you give anyone information that could have created that connection? No. You're sure? I'm sure the only people I've talked to are Jack Ruiz, Marcus Webb by phone, and Patricia Wren. Wren wrote that article. No byline. She says it wasn't her. She'd know her own work, Sandra said half to herself. She made a note. The conflict issue with Holloway and Crane. How did you find out? Source I trust. Wren again. He didn't confirm it. Sandra made another note. The man who drove past, outside, she said. Dark Tahoe, no front plate. You got to look at the driver. Partial, white male 40s, heavy build, dark jacket. Sandra stopped writing. Dark jacket, she said. Yeah. Canvas or wool, something cold moved along Liam's spine. Canvas. She set down her pen. Carefully. The way you set something down when your hands need to be deliberate. Derek Solis wears a dark canvas jacket, she said. It's on his record. Identifiable clothing he's worn in 3 separate documented incidents. She looked at Liam directly. He wasn't picked up, Liam, or if he was, he's been released. And he's here. The shop was quiet around them. Through the wall, Liam could hear the faint sound of Danny running water in the bathroom. Ruiz told me Solis and Cook were taken by people they couldn't identify, Liam said slowly. Ruiz told you what he knew at the time? Sandra said, information changes. She picked up her phone. I need to make a call. To Jack. To the Mojave County Sheriff's Office, she said, because what you just described, an identified assault suspect surveilling a witness, is something I can do something about officially. And right now, official is better than unofficial. Jack said to stay quiet. Jack's legal interests and your legal interests are not identical, Sandra said not unkindly. I'm your lawyer, not Jack's. She held his gaze. Do I make the call? Liam thought for about 4 seconds. Make the call, he said. She made the call. She was on for 8 minutes, during which Liam stood at the bay window and watched the street, and the dark Tahoe did not come past again. And the morning went on in its ordinary Kingman way, which felt increasingly surreal against the backdrop of everything underneath it. When she hung up, her expression was the expression of someone who'd received information that confirmed a suspicion and didn't enjoy being right. Solis was brought in for questioning last night, she said. Released this morning at 4 a.m. Insufficient evidence to hold. Cook is still unaccounted for, which means one of 2 things: either Pruitt's people are protecting him or someone else has him. She paused. The deputy I spoke to also mentioned that there's been a report filed this morning against you. The word landed in the room like something thrown. Against me, Liam said. Derek Solis filed a complaint 40 minutes ago claiming that you approached him and 3 associates in a parking lot 2 nights ago and assaulted them without provocation. Sandra's voice was steady and professional, but her eyes were direct. He's claiming self-defense on his part and premeditated assault on yours. He's also claiming you had prior knowledge of his presence there and targeted him specifically. Liam stared at her. The video, he started. Shows you approaching them, yes, Sandra said. From the right angle, with the right framing, the creative reading of 31 seconds of footage could be made to support his version. It won't hold the man on the ground is visible. The 4-on-1 dynamic is clear, but it doesn't need to hold. It just needs to create enough noise to make you a defendant rather than a witness, which completely changes your position legally and publicly. Liam turned away from the window. He put both hands on the workbench and stood there with his head down for a moment, not from defeat, but because he needed to feel the metal under his palms, needed something real and fixed, while the situation shifted underneath him. This was what the Tahoe was for, not surveillance. Confirmation. Solis drove past to make sure Liam was here at work, served and cornered, before the complaint landed. What do I do? He said. You do nothing publicly for the next 6 hours, Sandra said. I'm going to file a counter-complaint, get your statement formally documented, and make sure the security footage from the gas station is preserved with proper chain of custody before anyone with an interest in its disappearance can interfere with it. She stood up. And you're going to call Marcus Webb. He looked at her. Jack told you about Webb, he asked. Jack told me enough, she said. What happens in Tucson on Saturday changes the calculus of your position. Right now, you're a private individual with no institutional backing caught between two large forces. That's the worst place to be. Webb's offer, whatever the specific terms are, gives you a different kind of standing. She picked up her legal pad. I'm not telling you to accept it. I'm telling you that the landscape looks different depending on which side of that decision you're on. She stepped out to make calls, and Liam was left alone in Danny's office with the morning sun coming through the blinds in flat bars and the sound of the street outside and the very specific weight of a situation that had, in the space of 48 hours, gone from a wrench in a parking lot to a legal complaint, a surveillance operation, a corrupt permit meeting in Phoenix, and a missing man who might be protected or might be dead. He called Jack. Jack picked up in one ring again. Solis filed a complaint, Liam said. I know, Jack's voice was tight. I heard 20 minutes ago. You didn't call me. Sandra was with you. Jack, Liam stopped, restarted. Is there anything else I don't know that I should know? A pause, the kind that meant yes. The shop in Bullhead City, Jack said. The mechanic who serviced the Street Glide 3 weeks ago. His name is Tommy Reyes. He's been with us for 6 years. Another pause. We found a second tracker this morning on Ruiz's bike. Same placement. Same device. Liam closed his eyes briefly. Tommy put it there, he said. Tommy had access, Jack said carefully. We don't have confirmation yet. Jack, same placement, same device, 2 bikes serviced by the same man. That's confirmation. A silence. Yeah, Jack said quietly. It is. Where's Tommy now? That's what we're working on. Does Pruitt know you found the trackers? If Tommy told him yes, if Tommy's been out of contact, then Pruitt's working with incomplete information, Liam said. He doesn't know what you know or when you found out. He thought quickly. The permit meeting, 2 o'clock. If Pruitt thinks his intelligence is still intact, he'll be confident going into that meeting, which means he won't be watching for interference. Liam, Patricia Wren has been building a case for 2 years, Liam said. She has documentation. If she had something that connected Pruitt directly to Solis and last night's attack, and if that something made it to the right desk at the county before 2 o'clock, that's not how it works, Jack said, but his voice had changed. The flatness was gone. Something underneath it was listening. You told me last night that Pruitt doesn't like daylight, Liam said. The video gave him some, but a video of a parking lot fight is one thing. Documentation of a developer orchestrating an assault on a private citizen to coerce a land sale, that's a different kind of light entirely. That's the kind of light that delays permit meetings indefinitely. Silence. You've been in this for 2 days, Jack said. I know. You're talking about moving against a man with serious resources in a very short window. I'm talking about giving a journalist information she already half has, Liam said. She does the rest. That's her job. A long pause. If I make a call, Jack said slowly, and certain documentation becomes available to Wren before noon, documentation that's been sitting in a folder for a while, waiting for the right moment, you had nothing to do with that. You were at work all morning. Your lawyer was with you. I was at work all morning, Liam said. My lawyer was with me. And Saturday is still Saturday, Jack said. And Saturday is still Saturday. The call ended. Liam put his phone in his pocket and went out to the bay and picked up his tools. Danny was pulling a sedan onto the second lift, and the ordinary work of the morning resumed around him, the smell of oil and rubber and metal, the specific sounds of a working shop, the work itself which asked nothing of him except precision and attention and the willingness to finish what he started. At 11:43, Patricia Wren published a piece. Not a local station article, not a stringer item, a full investigation piece byline sourced and specific running on a regional platform with a reach that covered the entire Southwest. It named Gerald Pruitt, it named Cornerstone Pacific, it cited documented communications emails, meeting records, payment logs connecting Pruitt's company to Derek Solis across 3 separate engagements over 14 months. It included a timeline of the Mojave County land dispute, the 3 refused offers to Jack Mercer, and a detailed account of the assault on the night of the viral video, framed not as a biker incident, but as an orchestrated act of coercion against a private property owner. It also included in the final section a brief account of the complaint Solis had filed that morning against Liam Hayes, which Patricia characterized as, in her precise and well-sourced language, consistent with a pattern of retaliatory legal action used by Cornerstone Pacific to silence witnesses and complicate narratives in prior land acquisition disputes. By 12:30, the Pruitt piece had 40,000 shares. By 1:15, the county permitting office in Phoenix released a statement indicating that the 2 o'clock meeting regarding preliminary corridor authorization in Mohave County had been postponed pending review of materials recently brought to the office's attention. Liam read the statement on his phone in the bay, standing next to a sedan with its hood up. He read it twice. Then he put his phone away and went back to work. Sandra came in at 1:45 with the expression of someone who had had a productive morning. "The complaint against you has been flagged for review given the publication of Wren's piece," she said. "It's not dismissed yet, but it's effectively on ice. Solis's attorney hasn't responded to the sheriff's office callbacks." She looked at Liam steadily. "You want to tell me what happened between 9 a.m. and now?" "I was here," Liam said. "Working." She looked at him for a moment. "Right," she said. She almost smiled. "I'll be back tomorrow morning. Don't talk to anyone in the meantime." She left. Danny appeared from the front office. He had his phone in his hand and the look on his face of a man who'd been watching the news refresh every 10 minutes for 4 hours. "Liam," he said, "I know." "The permit?" "I know Danny." "Did you—" He stopped, started over. "Are you okay?" Liam set down his wrench. He thought about his mother at the kitchen table that morning, saying, "Don't let it cost you who you are." He thought about Jack's hand on his shoulder saying, "Go in a way that meant come back." He thought about Marcus Webb saying his hands knew more than his words. He thought about Hector Castillo's leaking roof. "Yeah," he said, "I'm okay." He was more than okay. He was something he didn't have a word for yet, something that felt like the moment when you have been working on an engine for a long time, pulling components in testing and tracing symptoms back to their source, and you finally get your hands on the actual problem, the real one, the thing underneath everything else, and you understand exactly what needs to be done, and you have the tools to do it, and all that's left is the work itself. He picked up the wrench. Saturday was 4 days away, and 4 days in the life of a man who'd already changed everything in 11 seconds was a very long time. The 4 days before Saturday were not quiet. Tuesday, Sandra called to tell him the complaint from Solis had been formally withdrawn. No explanation from Solis's attorney, no statement, just a one-line filing that made the whole thing disappear as cleanly as it had appeared. Sandra said that was actually more concerning than a fight because men like Solis didn't withdraw without being told to, and men like Pruitt didn't tell their people to stand down unless they were repositioning, not retreating. Liam heard that. He filed it. Wednesday, Ruiz showed up at the shop with 2 men Liam hadn't seen before and spent 40 minutes in the parking lot talking on the phone. He came in afterward and told Liam without being asked that Tommy Reyes had been located. He was in Laughlin, Nevada in a motel room, and he hadn't placed the trackers under duress or coercion. He'd done it for money. $11,000 paid in 2 installments, the second of which had cleared 4 days before the attack on Jack. Liam listened to all of this without saying much. "What happens to him?" he asked when Ruiz finished. Ruiz looked at him. "That's not your concern." "I'm making it my concern," Liam said, "because if what happens to Tommy Reyes is something that creates another problem layered on top of this one, then it matters to me." Ruiz held his gaze for a moment. "He's being dealt with internally," he said. "Nothing that puts anyone in a cell. Jack's not interested in that kind of solution." "What is he interested in?" "Making sure Tommy understands the full weight of what he did," Ruiz said, "and making sure it doesn't happen again." Liam nodded. He went back to work. Thursday, his mother had a doctor's appointment routine, the kind she'd been putting off for 3 months, because the copay had started to feel like a choice between that and the electric bill. He drove her. He sat in the waiting room with a magazine he didn't read, and when she came out, the doctor followed her to tell Liam directly that her numbers had stabilized, and that if the current medication protocol was maintained consistently, without gaps due to cost, the trajectory over the next 2 years was significantly better than it had been 6 months ago. Liam shook the doctor's hand and thanked him, and in the truck on the way home, his mother looked out the passenger window and said, "You already arranged something, didn't you?" "Not yet," he said, "but I'm going to." She didn't ask anything else. She put her hand briefly on his arm, then took it back, and they drove home in the easy silence of 2 people who understood each other well enough not to need words for everything. Friday night, he packed a bag, tools, clean clothes, the photograph of the Tucson shop that he'd been carrying in his chest pocket all week, and had transferred to the bag with the specific deliberateness of a man who understood that some things needed to stop being carried and start being arrived at. He drove to Tucson on Saturday morning before dawn, When the highway belonged to trucks in empty distance, and he thought about nothing in particular, which was rare for him and felt like the mental equivalent of a deep breath held and then released. Marcus Webb's shop was on the south side of Tucson, on a street that had more auto businesses than anything else. Liam had driven past it once before years ago on a parts run and hadn't known whose it was. He'd noticed it because the layout was efficient, everything positioned to minimize wasted movement, the kind of spatial logic that most shops developed accidentally over decades, and this one had clearly been designed with from the beginning. He pulled in at 7:58. Webb was already there. He was smaller than Liam had pictured from the voice compact 62 years old, with close-cropped white hair and the specific quality of stillness that very capable people sometimes have, the stillness of someone who doesn't waste motion because they've learned that motion without purpose is just noise. He was wiping his hands on a shop rag when Liam got out of the truck, and he looked at Liam the way Jack had looked at him in the urgent care parking lot measuring, but without the edge of threat. Just assessment. "Liam Hayes," he said. "Mr. Webb." "Marcus," Webb said. "We're not doing the Mr. thing." He looked at the truck. "You brought your tools." "You said I could." "I said you could leave them if you wanted. You didn't want to." He almost smiled. "Come inside." The shop was everything the photograph had suggested and several things it hadn't. The equipment was the kind that serious people spent serious money on, not because they wanted to impress anyone, but because imprecise tools produce imprecise results, and Marcus Webb was constitutionally incapable of imprecise results. Liam moved through it slowly, not touching anything, just looking with the focused attention of a man reading a room, the way he read an engine, understanding the logic of it, the relationships between components, what it was built to do. Webb watched him do this without speaking. After about 4 minutes, Liam stopped at a workbench in the back corner. On it was an engine partially disassembled components laid out in an order that was very specific and very deliberate. Liam recognized the block. Modified Harley-Davidson Milwaukee 8. The modifications were not factory, not aftermarket catalog. Someone had done serious custom work on the bore, the porting, the valve geometry. "Whose build?" Liam asked. "Mine," Webb said. "Started it 8 months ago. Put it down 6 weeks ago." "Why'd you put it down?" "Because I got to a point where the next decision was between two approaches, and I couldn't feel clearly which one was right. When I can't feel it clearly, I stop." He paused. "Most people push through when they can't feel it. That's how you ruin something." Liam crouched down and looked at the lower end without touching it. He looked at the bearing surfaces, the clearances visible from the outside, the specific choices made in the machining. "You went tighter on the rod clearances than spec," he said. "Yes." "Because you're running it harder than the factory engineers designed for." "Yes." "And the port work on the intake, you opened it more than most people would go because you want better low-end torque, not peak horsepower." Silence. "What does that tell you?" Webb asked. "That this engine isn't being built for a dyno sheet," Liam said. "It's being built for real-world riding. Long miles, variable conditions. You want it to feel right across the whole range, not just light up a number in ideal conditions." Webb was quiet for a moment. "The decision I couldn't make," he said. "What do you think it was?" Liam looked at the engine for another moment. He stood up. "The cam timing," he said. "You've pushed everything else far enough that the stock cam profile is the limiting factor now. But going too aggressive on the cam risks the low-end character you built everything else around. It's a balance point that's hard to calculate. You have to feel it." Webb looked at him with something in his eyes that was beyond assessment now. Something that was closer to recognition. "I've talked to 4 people about that engine in 6 weeks," Webb said. 3 of them gave me a recommendation inside 30 seconds. One of them told me to put it on a dyno and let the numbers decide." He paused. "You're the first one who understood what the actual problem was." Liam said nothing. "Put your hands on it," Webb said. Liam looked at him. "Go ahead," Webb said. "Tell me what you feel." He crouched down again and put his hands on the block. Not the machine surfaces, the external ones, the ones that would tell him about the material's behavior through the texture and temperature variations. The things you couldn't see, but could understand through contact if you'd spent enough years developing the vocabulary for it. He stayed there for almost 3 minutes. Webb didn't move, didn't speak. When Liam stood up, he said, "You want a cam with a slightly tighter lobe separation than what most people would spec for this bore." keeps the low-end torque intact, gives you the lift you need up top without fighting what you've already built into the bottom end, it's going to feel counterintuitive on paper. But on paper isn't where this engine lives. Webb exhaled slowly. How long have you been doing this, he asked. Working on bikes 4 years. That's not what I mean. Liam met his eyes. I know what you mean. Webb straightened up and put his hands in his pockets and looked at the engine for a moment. Jack wants me to take you on as a technical director in training, he said. That's the official term for it. What it means practically is that you work here with me for 18 months. You learn what I know, the good and the bad, and the hard parts. After 18 months, you take over management of the technical operations for the network, everything from fleet maintenance to builds like this one, to consulting on anything that requires this level of judgment. He looked at Liam. The compensation in the contract is accurate. The medical coverage for your mother starts on the 1st of next month if you sign by Monday. And Hector, Liam said. Jack called me Wednesday, Webb said. I made some calls of my own. There's a supply and service arrangement being structured for Hector Castillo's shop in Kingman, preferred parts pricing referral business from 3 other shops in the network, and a facilities upgrade that'll be framed as a contractor improvement project so it doesn't raise questions. He paused. He'll think he got lucky, which is accurate. He did get lucky. He got lucky that the kid he taught 20 years ago turned out to be someone who remembers where he came from. Liam stood very still. He'd promised himself he wasn't going to make this decision until he'd stood in this shop and talked to this man and understood what the work actually was. He'd been rigorous about that, had kept the decision at arm's length through a week of legal complaints and surveillance and permit battles and his mother's doctor visit and Ruiz in the parking lot and all of it. He'd kept it at arm's length because he knew himself well enough to know that the moment he let it get close, it was already decided and he'd wanted to be sure. He was sure. I have a condition, he said. Webb looked at him with something that was definitely a smile, this time brief and genuine. Jack told me you'd have a condition. This engine, Liam said. I want to finish it. A pause. That's your condition, Webb said. I want to finish it here with you before I sign anything. Not as a test, not as an audition, because it's not done, and leaving it undone bothers me, and I want to understand how you think before I agree to learn from you. Webb looked at him for a long moment. Then he reached into the bench drawer, pulled out a set of hand tools, and set them next to Liam's bag. Then let's finish it, he said. They worked for 4 hours. It was the most instructive 4 hours of Liam's working life. And not because Webb taught in the conventional sense. He didn't explain, didn't lecture, didn't narrate his decisions. He worked alongside Liam and asked questions at specific moments. And the questions were the teaching, each one positioned precisely at the point where a choice was being made, forcing Liam to articulate the reason for the choice before making it, which was harder than it sounded, because most of the time, Liam made choices with his hands before his mind caught up, and the question of why required him to work backward from instinct to language. At one point, 2 hours in, Webb stopped and looked at him. You're doing something I've only seen twice before, he said. Liam didn't stop working. What's that? You're running the calculation before you know you're running it. The result arrives first. The process stays invisible, even to you. He paused. That's not something I can teach. It's something you either have or you don't. Liam set down the tool he was holding. He looked at Webb. Why does it matter? He asked. To you, specifically. Webb was quiet for a moment. Because I've been doing this for 40 years, he said. And I've spent most of that time doing the work, but not enough of it making sure the work continues after I'm done with it. I'm 62. My hands are still good. My eyes are still good. I've got maybe 10 years of this left at this level, maybe less. He looked at the engine. I don't want what I know to end when I do. That sounds large. It's actually very simple. I want to hand something to someone who will carry it right. Liam picked the tool back up. Okay, he said. They finished the engine at 12:40. Webb looked it over with the careful attention of a man who had no tolerance for almost right running his hands over the work, the way Liam had run his hands over the Street Glide's frame in that parking lot a week ago, checking by feel for the things that weren't visible. He straightened up. It's right, he said, simply. It was the highest compliment Liam had ever received in his professional life, and it was delivered with no ceremony whatsoever, which made it better. They were washing up at the utility sink when Webb's phone rang. He glanced at it, then at Liam. Jack, he said, and answered it on speaker. How's it going? Jack asked. Engine's done, Webb said. Ask me a real question. A pause. Liam's still there. I'm here, Liam said. Pruitt's been in contact with his attorney since the Wren piece dropped, Jack said. The county meeting has been postponed indefinitely. There's a state-level inquiry opening into Cornerstone Pacific's land acquisition practices going back 4 years. Patricia Wren has been asked to provide documentation to the inquiry. A pause. Solis has an attorney who's negotiating what kind of cooperation looks like in exchange for reduced exposure. Liam leaned against the bench. What does that mean for the parcels, he asked. It means nobody is touching them, Jack said. Not without a legal fight that Pruitt doesn't want given the current attention. His entire play depended on quiet. He doesn't have quiet anymore. Another pause. You did that? Wren did that, Liam said. Wren had the documentation, Jack said. She'd had it for months. What she didn't have was the right moment to use it, something that gave the story enough visibility to matter enough public weight that the county couldn't look away. The video gave her that. You gave her that. His voice shifted slightly. Didn't need to, he said. The echo of what Liam had said in that parking lot. Didn't need to break his nose. That's apparently your operating principle. Liam said nothing. Saturday still going well, Jack asked. Webb looked at Liam. Liam looked at the engine they'd just finished sitting clean and complete on the bench. He looked at his hands. He thought about 11 seconds in a parking lot, in a rusted wrench, in a man on the ground who'd said walk away, and everything that had followed from the decision not to. He thought about his mother's hand on his arm in the truck. He thought about Hector Castillo's leaking roof soon to be repaired by a contractor who wouldn't ask questions. He thought about Patricia Wren publishing the truth because someone handed her at the moment she needed. He thought about Tommy Reyes in a motel room in Laughlin and Derek Solis pulling his complaint and a permit meeting that would not happen on the timeline Gerald Pruitt had planned. He thought about his father saying the right things, find you if you don't hide. He hadn't hidden. He'd gotten out of a truck with a rusted wrench and walked towards something instead of away from it, and everything that followed had been the consequence of that, not luck, not destiny, just the simple compounding arithmetic of one honest decision made at speed in the dark. Saturday went well, Liam said. He heard something in Jack's voice then. Not warmth exactly, Jack. Mercer wasn't built for warmth the way most people meant it, but something adjacent to it. Something that was satisfaction and respect in the particular quality of a man who'd been right about something he cared about being right about. Good, Jack said. I'll have Sandra send you the paperwork Monday morning. He hung up. Webb dried his hands and looked at Liam. You need lunch, he said. Yeah. There's a place 2 blocks over. Good green chile. We'll walk. They walked. The Tucson morning had gone full and bright around them, the heat doing what desert heat did, pressing down with a completeness that didn't apologize for itself. Liam walked with his hands loose at his sides and his mind quieter than it had been in a week, the specific quiet of a man who has made a large decision and made it right. One thing, Webb said as they walked, the 18 months, it's not going to be easy. I know. I'm not a patient teacher. You spent 4 hours this morning not explaining a single thing and just asking questions at the exact right moment, Liam said. That's the most patient kind of teachings there is. Webb looked at him sideways. He said. They got lunch. Webb ordered for both of them without asking which, under other circumstances, Liam would have found irritating and in this context found oddly comfortable, like a thing that was already settled between them. They ate without talking much, which was fine. Liam had learned in the last week to read silence differently, not as absence, but as presence, as a thing that serious people used when words would only dilute what was already understood. On the drive back to Kingman that afternoon, Liam called his mother. She picked up on the 3rd ring. How'd it go? She asked. Good, he said. Really good. A pause, he could hear her exhale. When do you start? 2 weeks, he said. I need to give Danny notice. Train whoever takes my spot. Danny's going to be upset. Danny's going to be fine. He's got 2 good techs coming up. He just doesn't know it yet. A pause. Mom, the medical coverage. It starts next month. The specialist in Phoenix, the one Dr. Ewan mentioned. Liam. I'm making the appointment, he said. Not a question. I'm making it Monday. Silence on her end, the kind that meant she was holding something together. Okay, she said quietly. Okay, he said. He drove. The highway was straight and long, the way Arizona highways were the kind of road that made you feel both very small and very located. Like the landscape was indifferent to you personally, but precise about where you were. At the Kingman exit, he took the surface roads instead of the highway spur, and he drove past Malone's out of habit dark now, closed for the weekend, the bay doors down the lot empty. He'd worked there for 4 years, and the place had given him what he needed when he needed it, and now he was moving past it, which was the right thing, which didn't make it simple. He drove past it and didn't stop. He drove past the turnoff for Route 66, past the gas station, with the security camera that had recorded 31 seconds of footage that had been seen by 22 million people by Thursday, and was still climbing past the empty lot where a week ago he had gotten out of a truck with a rusted wrench because he couldn't drive away. He didn't stop there either. He drove home. His mother was in this kitchen, and there was soup on the stove again, and the house smelled like warmth and ordinary life, and Liam Hayes walked through the front door of the only place he'd ever fully been himself, and stood in the kitchen with his jacket still on, and looked at the woman who had raised him alone and loved him without condition, and turned the bills face down on the counter so he wouldn't see her worry. She looked at him. "You're different," she said. "Same," he said. She shook her head. "Same person, different weight." She turned back to the stove. "Sit down." He sat down. She set a bowl in front of him. He looked at it for a moment, the steam, the smell, the simple, concrete realness of it, and something in his chest settled into a place it hadn't occupied in a long time. He thought about a rusted wrench. 11 seconds. A man on the ground who'd said walk away, and a 26-year-old mechanic from Kingman, Arizona, who had never once in his life been very good at doing what he was told when what he was told contradicted what he knew was right. He picked up the spoon. 3 seconds in a dark parking lot had started all of this. Not because Liam Hayes was extraordinary, in the way that stories usually required, not because he was fearless, or chosen, or built for something larger than himself, but because he was the specific person he was, with the specific hands he had standing in the specific place where something needed doing, and he had not looked away. That was the whole of it. That was enough. Liam Hayes ate his soup, and in 2 weeks he would drive to Tucson with everything he owned in the bed of his truck, and the work he was built for was finally waiting for him, and he was ready.